The United States and Israel are joined at the hip, as I've said on many occasions. And the Russians and the Iranians, this is my second point, have come to understand that there's no appeasing the United States or Israel. You have to play hardball with them. If you think you can be nice to the United States and to Israel and they'll work out some sort of accommodation with you, you're living in a dream world. So what this means is that the Russians and the Iranians are coming closer and closer together. And by the way, that alliance includes the Chinese and the North Koreans as well, right? Because they all understand that they're under threat from the United States. So they're coming closer together. And furthermore, as I just said, they all understand that you have to play hardball with the United States and with Israel. And that's what's going on here. And this is a remarkably dangerous situation because, as I said a few minutes ago, the Israelis and the Iranians are on the escalation ladder. And where this all ends is very hard to say. And now what you're adding to the mixture is the fact that the Russians are beginning to assert their influence in the Middle East. And this just makes it even more complicated.
As Professor John Mearsheimer points out, we are witnessing a fundamental realignment of global alliances. The United States and Israel, long-standing allies, now find themselves in an increasingly isolated position. Opposing them is an alliance led by Russia and Iran, with China and North Korea also joining ranks. This coalition of nations is growing more unified by the day, and it's not because they want to, it's because they feel they have no other option. These nations have recognized that diplomacy with the United States or Israel is futile. Years of failed negotiations and unmet promises have led them to a grim conclusion. The only way to protect their sovereignty and their interests is to push back and push hard. As Mearsheimer aptly describes it, these nations are playing hardball, and the stakes could not be higher. But what does this mean for the rest of the world? What are the broader implications of this rapidly escalating situation? The alliance between Russia, Iran, China, and North Korea represents a serious challenge to the established global order. Individually, these countries have always been thorns in the side of U.S. foreign policy, but together, they form a powerful counterweight. This isn't just about military capabilities. This alliance also has profound economic and strategic implications. Let's look at Russia and China, for example. Russia's military prowess combined with China's economic strength creates a formidable partnership. China, as the world's second-largest economy, can finance and support military actions or sanctions in ways that few other nations can. Meanwhile, Russia provides the military expertise and equipment that Iran and North Korea desperately need. Together, they form a nearly impenetrable network of military and economic cooperation. And then there's Iran, a key player in the Middle East, controlling critical oil routes and possessing significant regional influence. It's no wonder Mearsheimer calls this a remarkably dangerous situation. With Iran ready to escalate, especially after recent Israeli strikes, the region is on the brink of a full-scale confrontation. The situation between Israel and Iran has been tense for years, but now we are seeing both sides climb the escalation ladder at an alarming rate. Israel, backed by the U.S., has conducted numerous airstrikes against Iranian targets, while Iran has retaliated with missile strikes. It's important to understand that these actions aren't isolated. They are part of a larger pattern of tit-for-tat responses that inch us closer to a broader conflict. Mearsheimer's observation about the escalation ladder is key here. In conflicts like these, every action leads to a reaction, and with each move, the risk of a catastrophic miscalculation grows. Israel is now at a point where any significant strike on Iranian infrastructure, particularly its oil fields or nuclear facilities, could provoke a response that affects not just the Middle East, but the entire world. And that's where things get really dangerous. If Iran's oil infrastructure is targeted, they have made it clear that their response will be devastating. Mearsheimer calls this the quasi-nuclear option because, while it's not literally nuclear, it could have similarly catastrophic effects on the global economy. A disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, where a significant portion of the world's oil passes, would send oil prices skyrocketing, destabilizing economies far beyond the Middle East. This threat isn't just theoretical. We've seen what happens when even minor disruptions occur in oil supply chains. Prices spike, markets panic, and economic instability follows. Now imagine this happening on a much larger scale. Countries reliant on Middle Eastern oil, Europe, Asia, even parts of the United States, would face immediate shortages, and the ripple effects would be felt globally. Russia and China, meanwhile, are watching closely. Both countries have a vested interest in seeing the United States' influence in the Middle East diminish. For Russia, this means expanding its foothold in the region, while for China, it's about securing energy supplies and increasing its geopolitical clout. Russia has already started asserting itself more aggressively in the region, working closely with Iran to support the Assad regime in Syria, and now stepping up its involvement in broader Middle Eastern affairs. For Russia, every move the U.S. and Israel make is an opportunity to weaken Western influence and solidify its own. China, though not directly involved in military actions, has a critical role to play. Its Belt and Road Initiative has deepened ties with countries across the Middle East, and its need for stable oil supplies means it cannot afford to see the region descend into chaos. If Iran is pushed too far, China may find itself caught between protecting its economic interests and avoiding direct confrontation with the West. As Mearsheimer notes, we are standing on the precipice of something much larger than a regional conflict. The alliances forming and the tensions rising are global in nature. The potential for miscalculation is enormous, and the consequences of that could be devastating. The real question is, where does this all lead? Are we heading for a wider war? One that pulls in global powers like Russia, China, and even NATO? Or is there still time for diplomacy to de-escalate the situation? The United States and Israel are locked in a dangerous game, one that is becoming increasingly difficult to control. The more they push, the more they provoke a united front of adversaries who are prepared to escalate in ways that could have global consequences. This is not just about Israel and Iran anymore. This is about the future of global stability. The only way out of this escalating situation is through diplomacy, but time is running out. Mearsheimer warns that as long as the U.S. and Israel continue their hardline approach, the chances of a diplomatic solution grow slimmer. Iran, Russia, and their allies are not going to back down, and neither is Israel. Without meaningful negotiations, the situation will continue to spiral. The stakes are too high to ignore. If diplomacy doesn't take center stage soon, we could see the Middle East, and perhaps the world, plunge into a conflict that will leave no one unscathed. It's time for cooler heads to prevail, for leaders on all sides to recognize that the costs of war far outweigh any potential gains. In the end, as Mearsheimer alludes, the real tragedy is that this situation could have been avoided. But now, we are on the edge of something far more dangerous, and the world must act before it's too late. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. The stakes have never been higher. According to John Mearsheimer, the United States and Israel are joined at the hip, as I've said on many occasions. The Russians and the Iranians, this is my second point, have come to understand that there's no appeasing the United States or Israel. You have to play hardball with them. If you think you can be nice to the United States and Israel, and they'll work out some sort of accommodation with you, you're living in a dream world. So what this means is that the Russians and the Iranians are coming closer and closer together. By the way, that alliance includes the Chinese and the North Koreans as well, right? Because they all understand that they're under threat from the United States. So they're coming closer together. Furthermore, as I just said, they all understand that you have to play hardball with the United States and Israel. That's what's going on here. This is a remarkably dangerous situation. Thanks for watching.